But we have Drew Glover with us, who's a fundraising coach here at Bonterra. And he's super passionate about fundraising, building deep relationships, and supporting nonprofit partners and organizations across the country with their campaigns, with their engagement strategies, and more. And so he's a huge wealth of knowledge. And so we're super lucky to have him with us today, kicking off this campaign for us. So Drew, I will take my back seat because people are here to hear from you and not me. So appreciate you being here, and I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Amanda, and hello everyone out there from all the different places looking in the chat, just from all over the country. Really great to be here with everyone and share kind of some skills and strategies to help you reach your fundraising goal. A little bit about me. Like Amanda said, my name is Drew Glover. I'm originally from California, but right now I live in Selma, Alabama, doing great work. I've been in the nonprofit sector doing development and fundraising, strategic planning for over the last 10 years, which is crazy every time I say that out loud, that it's been that long, but it's something that's been really deep passion of mine and really close to my heart, with being able to help folks reach their goals, but also make significant impact in communities. Over that time period, raised over $20 million in support for nonprofits of all shapes and sizes, from startup nonprofits that are just getting started with their base budget to $10 million a year organizations, and helping them to kind of set up their structures and kind of reevaluate, because even fundraising is a consistent thing. We're always learning and growing. And then I really focus on 3 pillars of fundraising, which we'll talk about today in the training. So in this session, we're going to cover a variety of things, specifically, like I mentioned before, the 3 essentials of interactive fundraising and how to maximize the impact in your goal, how to create a solid year-round fundraising strategy, how to create a culture of fundraising within your organization so that if you are the designated fundraiser, you're not doing it alone. And I'm sure, I can't see anyone, but I'm sure I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding ethereally. And then strategies for transformative long-term donor relationships. And you'll hear me talk a lot about relationships throughout. And if you're working with me as a coach, because that really is one of the core elements of fundraising as we move forward. So really quick, we have a poll for you. I just want to know, just get an idea, how experienced are you when it comes to fundraising? Are you not experienced at all? You have some experience, you've done it a little bit, or you are a fundraising expert and you know what you need to know to be able to make things happen. I'll give you 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds to fill out that poll.
All right, so you've got responses coming in the poll as well as in the chat. Most people so far falling in some experience, right? Yeah. We've got a pretty steep, I'd call it almost exact bell curve here for folks in not experienced and fundraising expert.
Okay, I love it. Well, yes, definitely a lot of 2s, and this is great because if you've already established some fundraising experience, if you already know, or even if you're just starting from the beginning, then this resource and the webinar information will help you kind of get those next steps in the structure going. So I want to just use this chat because it's all about interactive, right? I don't want you just sitting there listening to me talk. So what's the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word, Amanda? If you wouldn't mind? Fundraising, that one. So write in the chat really quick. What's the first word? Money, money, challenging, moolah, stress, money, resources, making money. I love it. Look at all of them coming in. Intimidating, anxiety, uphill battle, least favorite thing, cultivation, support us hard. So an array of words. And I do that in the beginning of these conversations because it's important to know that we're all coming from so many different places when it comes from both experience with fundraising to also our personal relationship with fundraising. And it's important to acknowledge those things as we're moving through this work, because if we're experiencing stress, hardships, uphill battles, things that are difficult, we want to be sure to uplift that and start to look at our relationship with the way that we're fundraising and the way that we engage with it as we're going to go through with this plan. So we'll go on to the next slide. So I mentioned before the 3 essential interactive fundraising elements that are data, we have visibility, and relationships. And together they create this amazing trifecta of fundraising. None of them are more or less important in most respects, even though you'll hear me talk about relationships being paramount to almost everything, because each of them support each other in this triforce, you could call it, of Zelda nerd, excuse me, triforce of power. So let's move on to the next slide. So another interactive chat opportunity. What do I mean when I say data? Really quick in the chat, what do you got for me, everybody? Oh. Insights, research, impact, information, demos. Exactly. So, Amanda, if you wouldn't mind, we're talking about impact metrics when we're talking about data. So, what does it do? It helps us to understand internally the change that you're making around the issues within the organization, helps you evaluate and adjust. This takes place both with your programmatic elements, but especially with your fundraising. It helps you communicate externally the impact that you're having in the community to illustrate how the funds are being used, and also helps to justify the need for more resources to make larger impact, looking at basically a donor's return on investment, because that's what they're doing. They're investing in your organization to make a change, and ultimately that builds trust. Next, we're going to talk about visibility. So what does visibility mean to you? Really quick in the chat. Exposure, marketing, being seen, awareness, known, networking, word of mouth, money. I love it. Opportunities to build trust. Exactly. Amanda, if you don't mind, visibility is letting us know that you exist and letting people know and educate them about the important work that you're doing, inspiring people to be involved and get involved with donating, volunteering, and talking about your organization. And if there's this great saying, if people don't see or hear you, they don't know you need support. And with that visibility, as you're pushing out those impact metrics and sharing information about what you're doing, you're building trust. Finally, relationships. We talk about this as being important, but why? Why are relationships important? Share in the chat. Connections, donations, building, trust building. All fundraising is human. That's great. Connection, longevity. Absolutely, Amanda. Relationships, they expand your reach. Get out there to all the different networks. Validate your work because you have other people advocating for you and creating and building trust. Now, what do you notice as a constant theme across all three of these? If you don't mind, Amanda, for the next slide. Boom. What's the common theme? Trust, right? And so there's this great quote, people don't fund organizations, they fund people they trust. And so you may have experienced that in your world where if you don't know someone, I always use the analogy, if I'm walking down the street and I ask you for $5, you're probably not going to give it to me. But if we're walking down the street and your friend says, this is Drew, he's doing amazing work, I think you should give him 20 bucks because it's going to make a big difference, you're way more likely to give me that 20 bucks because they trust you as their friend. Moving forward, there's some common pitfalls we make, though, in all of this that help us or hinder us, I should say, and help our fundraising to land flat. In these three areas, data specifically, weak or non-existent impact data. I work with a lot of clients that just aren't tracking stuff, which is okay. Take a note of that and then figure out ways that you can get that stronger data. There's no clear analysis when you don't have data, so you can't frame things that can be easily understood, and there's lack of clarity around fundraising needs, because if you don't know how much money you need, people don't know how much money to give. Visibility, inconsistent donor communications. So if you're not communicating on a regular basis with people, they may forget you even exist and go on and give money to another organization. Non-targeted communications, if I'm really into one part of your organization and you're telling me about something I don't really care about, I'm probably not going to donate. But if you know I'm interested in something, let me know. And utilizing storytelling. People don't do that. It makes it so that people can't personalize the experience. And relationships, if there's no team engagement across the organization, if it's siloed in what's going on and you're not leveraging your networks, then you oftentimes feel isolated. And that's where a lot of those feelings we saw in the chat of it being never ending, hard, stressful, difficult, it's much more difficult to do it alone. And so how can we build relationships? So now we're going to talk about creating the plan, which is what you're all here to learn about. First, we want to think about step one, and that's going to be assessing your current fundraising strategy. So asking these questions with yourself, but ultimately with your team so that you can get a chance to understand what's going on. This includes incorporating your board members, maybe bringing some volunteers, some community members that are really into what's going on or have been participating. What are you doing that's working? How have you made money in the past? And what's not working? Getting an understanding of that really help you start to prioritize where you put your energy because you have limited resources as an organization. Do you have clear fundraising goals and donor engagement strategies? How are you communicating those things? And how are you engaging with donors? Does your board engage in fundraising? Does it have 100% giving across all board members? And how are you communicating with your donors? All of those are important questions for you to start asking on step one, especially with that board engagement. I love the saying, if you're going to deposit your money in a bank and you ask the manager if he's invested or they've invested in the bank and they say no, it makes you wonder, why are they not investing in their own institution? And so we'll continue to talk about that more as we get into board engagement. Step two is setting those goals, right? Because goals are going to help us to track and keep ourselves accountable in what we're going to be doing. So always encourage people to think smart when it comes to goals. And if you've never heard that term before with SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, so that you can really get an idea of what's going on. And you can apply those to revenue targets on where you're trying to make that money, donor retention, so you can gauge how many people you're keeping and moving forward with, and new donors that you're bringing into the organization. Also, key performance indicators. What are you looking at to make sure and know that you're making that difference within your organization and your fundraising goals? And a great way to frame it is from X to Y by Z. I want to take X and increase it to Y by Z. And there's a lot of ways that we can work that into the flow and making it so that we can create realistic goals that keep each other accountable. And especially if you have your team setting their own goals. That's something that's really important too, is if your team sets their own goals, they can hold themselves accountable to the rest of the team. If you assign a goal to someone, there's much less investment. Same thing with building the plan, which we'll talk about. And so after you've got those kinds of ideas, you know how much money you have, you know what's worked in the past and kind of where you want to go. Now you can define your core strategy for giving. So this is prioritizing your primary giving campaigns. Are you planning for Giving Tuesday? Do you have an end of year giving strategy? What are other elements like events that you're working into your fundraising calendar throughout the year, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to make sure that you're getting where you need to go? How are you planning your ongoing engagement, such as recurring gifts, peer-to-peer fundraising, and major gifts, and engaging with folks on these different levels and different ways of getting them to give? And will you incorporate other activities outside of events in your fundraising? So those are all things that you really want to be thinking about strategically with regards to, okay, what ways are we going to be doing this? Step four is developing that fundraising calendar. You have your goals, you have an idea of how you want to raise money, but when are you going to do it? And this is where it's really important to include as many minds as possible. Because engaging with people in developing this calendar, not only will they be able to provide you with insight, because multiple brains working on a problem are better than one, but it also gives you the opportunity to have them commit to taking on one of those roles. Is it your annual gala that you're going to be doing? When is that? When do you need to start promoting for it? What's your fundraising strategy associated with the annual gala? What are you going to be doing around Giving Tuesday? Who's responsible for that? Who's making the content and the social media posts? And so figuring out what that looks like. And there's going to be a PDF template in the resource packet that you're going to be getting after this webinar that will help you in structuring that calendar so you can identify what, who, when, where, and why to be able to execute your fundraising. So that's the framework. We got the plan set out for part one. So now how do we execute it and move into donor engagement and fundraising? So here's part two. Step 5 of our 9-step process is to build the donor journey and your engagement strategy. So what is a donor journey? It's the donor's experience once they touch your organization. So if they come in as a newsletter, what's the next step? If they make a donation, what's the next strategy that you're going to use to not only engage with them, but then increase their involvement with the organization? And so we talk about pathways or donor funnels for new donors, lapsed and returning donors, and major donors. What are their experiences when a new person comes into the organization? Or when you're getting someone to give after they haven't given for a long time? Or someone who's given large amounts, but you're trying to increase their gift? What's the stewardship matrix? Many people haven't heard that term before, but it's basically a cool graph that helps you understand what actions you're going to take whenever a certain level of donation comes in and who's responsible for it. So if a $10 donation comes in, we may send out an email, and that may be the admin staff. But if someone sends in the $1,000 donation, what is the action that you're taking? Are you just sending them an email? Is it a phone call? Is it an invitation with the executive director to have coffee, to talk more about why they gave $1,000 to the organization and how they might be able to support? So many options. And then also using your CRM. We're Bonterra, so we're all about that data. So how do you structure and understand donor trends, segmentations of interest, and personalizing the engagement so that the messaging that you're putting out there is actually hitting the mark and making an impact where it needs to go? Step 6, implementing multi-channel outreach. Now, this is great and important because you have to figure out where you want to put your message. If I work with a population of predominantly young kids, I may not choose Facebook as the way that I communicate. I may use Instagram or TikTok as the way that I engage with folks. If I know that I have people that really enjoy or I have really high email open rates, I'm going to prioritize my email and then post that on my social media so that people can get it in all kinds of ways. Text messaging, is that something that you're into? It's a great way to engage with people across all demographics, and they can get it straight to their phone. So what are the ways that you're going to be communicating? And then how are you going to communicate your impact metrics, that data we talked about? We want to emphasize the donor's return on investment. So how is their money being used? What's the impact that it's making? And then why should they give more? What needs do you have? And how do you communicate that so people can understand where the shortfalls are? We can also leverage AI solutions and automations. Those are also great tools with Bonterra, which you'll learn more about through the different materials and information that we'll distribute through the context. AI is a great tool. I know people have mixed feelings about it. And if you don't want to use it, totally understand. If you have a very small team, AI will be a very solid tool for you to be able to use to not only get a better understanding of your donor trends and potential ways to explore greater gifts, but also in crafting content, making those social media posts and creating newsletters to support your multi-channel outreach. And then storytelling. I can't say it enough, so I'm going to say it 3 times. Storytelling, storytelling, storytelling. Personal experiences are going to be the things that connect people. It's going to create empathy and understanding and tangibly see the impact of their dollars. If you're working with an organization where you have issues of confidentiality, absolutely, we don't want to breach that. Use a pseudonym and a stock image. Change the name, share the experience. What were they dealing with when they came into the organization? How did you serve them, and what did they do while they were there, and what was the end result? That will make a world of difference when people are reading your content, as opposed to donate money to us. Step 7, and we're almost there. Before we get to that, I want to talk about this case study. So this is one of the clients I worked with. They were brand new to Bonterra through our Jumpstart program, which I encourage you, if you're a small or just getting started nonprofit, check it out. It provides access to our software and coaching so that you can kind of get rolling and get up off the ground. This is an organization out of West Kansas. They had started a couple of years ago. They were brand new to fundraising. They didn't have a lot of connections, but they had some really unique stuff. They were the only children's museum, and still are, within a 300-mile radius of where they operate. They engaged in public events and engaged all across West Kansas, traveling from corner to corner to be able to make it so they can engage with folks. And through working with, the strategies that we're talking about right now, they were able to incorporate a multi-channel communication strategy, incorporate social media calendars and strategic planning, working to develop a short video to tell those stories and hear from people that benefited from the organization. We established clear fundraising goals, leveraged relationships, and then utilized their board to push out the message. And what happened during their match day? They had a goal of $3,000 and they raised $6,000, twice as much as they were planning to raise, just by using these strategies that we're talking about. It was amazing to see the look on their faces when they reported back to me and said, guess how much we raised? And as a coach, those are the kind of things that we go for. Moving forward, we'll jump to step 7. And so now this is what we talked about with engaging the team. This is what we want across the organization. And the way I refer to it is to build a culture of fundraising by involving board, volunteers, and staff in donor engagement. Everyone across the board is responsible for fundraising. It's not just you. The key is helping them understand that and find ways for them to plug in that they are excited about. You can delegate roles to the team and make it so that they can engage, or you can have them volunteer. That's even better because you get them excited about it, you make it run, and they jump in headfirst to be able to make it happen. As coaches and other folks can give presentations to your board so they can help understand what's going on in the roles, and also understanding some of the concerns. But engaging the board and create fundraising committees is going to be essential. So I'm going to say that again. Building a fundraising committee is essential because the board, and the way I like to see it, their job is to govern and to raise money. Those are the two things. So having a committee on the board keeps them engaged, keeps them rolling, and keeps them happening on. More on step 7. We have some more things for you. People, as we saw in the chat, sometimes have a fear of fundraising, right? It's totally normal. Talking about money, asking people for money, it's really uncomfortable for some people. They don't have that skill set or don't feel good about it. So address that within your group. Ask people how they feel about asking for money and realize that the ultimate bottom line is that they don't have to ask for money, but everyone has to be involved. Are they making the introductions to you? A warm introduction handoff so that they can build trust? Are they helping to coordinate events? Are they staffing tables? Are they donating money from themselves? Are they offering matching funds? Are they engaging with funders? Like, there are so many ways for them to involve without asking directly for money. Step 8, after we jump into part 3, which is the relationship driven, and this is one of my favorite parts, transformational fundraising and stewardship. So we'll talk about what that means with transformational fundraising. Just a quick statistic here, which I really enjoy. If you didn't know, 88% of a nonprofit's funds will normally come from about 12% of its donors. That's one of the reasons why it's so important to bring as many people in as possible so that then you can start to understand and upgrade those people that are donating. If I come in at $5, but you know I'm possible for $10, or I come in at $100 and you work me up to $200, as we continue to build those relationships, those gifts will continue to expand and your top donors are going to surface. And those are the ones that you can focus on for major gifts. In that, and the way that we do that and build those relationships up to major gifts is thinking about the ways that we steward relationships from transactional, which is what we're usually, you give me money, I ask for money, and that's it, is a transformational relationship where it starts to change the relationship from people from a short-term gift into a long-term investment with the organization, because through the trust-based fundraising, you convert or transform a transactional donor into a transformational change maker within your organization, where they can see their impact and they want to get more and more involved over time because they are committed and invested in what you're doing. In addition, to the next slide, in addition to those other elements, cultivating deep relationships through communications and meaningful touch points. So if you've ever heard of the term friend raiser, put a 1 in the chat. I'm curious. Okay, you have heard of friend raisers. I love it. I love it. Wow, this is so fantastic. A lot of times when I ask that question, people have no idea what I'm talking about. They look like I'm talking another language. What is a friend raiser? So friend raisers are opportunities to create these meaningful touch points where you're not asking for money. The ultimate goal of those engagement opportunities is to build friendships and relationships within the organization. This is a great way for your board members that don't like to ask for money to plug in, because they can invite their network to come and learn about the organization. You're going to give a demonstration about what you do. You're going to have someone talk that receives services. You're going to share about your future vision for the organization. And then you're going to give them the opportunity to sign up for the newsletter. That's it. No money, no nothing. Because what does that do? It gets them into your donor funnel where they're going to start receiving information. They're going to know that you exist, and then you'll be able to slowly steward those relationships into larger goals. People may, at those events, because you'll have a QR code somewhere where you can scan it to take you to your everyday giving page, they can donate there if they want to, but that's not the main focus. And leveraging those relationships. So here's another case study. This is another client of mine, No Surrender Running Club. They provide running mentorship programs for youth that are struggling or dealing with issues. Amazing work. And they were working on their end of year giving campaign structure. We were talking about how we can structure things so that they can be engaging people more deeply. And normally, and this was really cool, normally they have to send out additional letters for major donors to remind them to donate. Through our work together, they implemented strategic multi-channel communications and also donor stewardship, like we talked about, to develop that trust. That incorporated newsletters, social media posts, a short video with testimonies from the staff. You notice a trend here of what I'm talking about with regards to how to get your message out there. The result from that was that donor, or one of the donors, and others as well, that normally needed an additional step to bring in their major gift or their gift for the year, the donor contacted the organization without any other impetus or any other catalyst to ask if it was okay for them to make that contribution. So it's removing steps. It may seem like, oh man, like this is a lot of communication stuff, but ultimately this will make your fundraising world much smoother because people will start to come to you and offer to give you money even without you having to ask for it. So on to the next. Step 9, and this is so important. We talk about data. We talk about the importance of understanding the impact. And so measuring and optimizing your fundraising. I mentioned before, fundraising is a consistent thing for those of you that came in after the very beginning of the webinar. Fundraising is ongoing. It doesn't get set and then remain static. Your fundraising calendar and your fundraising and development strategy should be a living document that's consistently ever growing and evolving within your organization. And you do that by looking at what works and tracking your impact, both in the community, but also internally with your fundraising. So what were those key performance indicators that you set up in the beginning when you first started this process? What were the SMART goals that you established? Are you tracking them? Are you watching and seeing what's going on? What is the progress quarterly that you're doing? Because if you check it quarterly, you can readjust. You can understand what's working and what doesn't work. You can reevaluate your communication strategies. And then every quarter, you can make those small tweaks till you really find what works best for your organization. Each organization is unique, and that's what's really important about this. Arts and museums are totally different than direct services for people dealing with lack of access to resources. Criminal justice organizations are dealing with totally different fundraising strategies in some ways than environmental organizations. And at the same time, when I say that, I want to emphasize that all of our issues are connected intrinsically together. So trying to draw that awareness and building partnerships to not be in siloed fundraising. We talked about that too. So work with folks, understand your relationship with them and other issues, and realize that you need to figure out a solution that works for your organization. Nothing is cut and paste, right? The resource we're going to give you is amazing. It's got all kinds of great stuff in it. And you're going to have to add your own je ne sais quoi, I think is the right word, right? To make it specifically fit what you need and to hit your goals. I think we have time for questions. I didn't, I went through that fast because I wanted to make sure we had enough time for conversation at the end. You'll also receive the recording of this and you'll receive the PDF packet that has all of these things broken out for you to be able to do with associated templates you can fill in. But let's take a second and answer some questions. What'd you think? What came up for you? And do you need clarity on anything?
Yeah, I'll let you take a breath, Drew. That was a lot and really awesome information. I did want to quickly prompt folks, if you are interested in working with a coach. I know Drew, talked about some of the organizations that he worked with, talk about some of his work here at Bonterra, and you want to learn more about that, let us know. We'd happy to chat with you about what that one-to-one coaching looks like. So I will take that moment, leave that up for a second while Drew catches his breath. And just thank you so much for all of the great information. And thanks everyone for bearing with me moving the slides. I know there's nothing worse than when people have to say next slide, but we had to make it work real quick. So appreciate the patience. Now, Drew, back on the hot seat. Some questions that came in throughout the session. Drop them in the Q&A. I see some coming in through the chat. I'll try to bring them all together as best I can. The first one came in from Kate, who was talking about step 7. And the ask was, how do you recruit for your fundraising committee when you found that nobody really wants to volunteer for it?
I would start with trying to understand why no one wants to volunteer for it. It gets back to understanding people's relationship with fundraising. So are people not wanting to join the fundraising committee because they think they're going to have to go out and ask for money, or because they have no interest in fundraising? If you have an entire board with no interest in fundraising, that opens up a whole nother conversation, because you have to ask yourself, I mean, and this may be a touchy point for some people, but is this board the right board for the organization? Uh, do you have board agreements? Because if you don't have board agreements, it's really hard to hold board members accountable. So organizations create policies and procedures within their organization that require board members to participate in some form of fundraising, whether it is their annual gift, so we get that 100% board giving, or whether it's the requirement that they participate in at least one committee on the board. So that's one way you can start taking steps towards creating what's called a working board, where they're actually engaged and taking a step beyond governance and just passing down votes and turning it into a team effort of raising money. Have a fundraising professional come and do a presentation for your board to understand and help them to see. Because so oftentimes, and this is a really weird phenomenon, you may be kicking butt, taking names, and doing a great job, and your requests could fall flat on a board. Bring in a paid professional, and for whatever reason, if they say you need to create a fundraising committee, your board will create a fundraising committee. That might not, maybe not your board, but that's another tool in your tool belt. And also, what kind of relationship do you have with your board members? Are they people that are over here that you only hear from once a year that you see at the annual gathering? Or do you have a personal relationship with them? What's your relationship with the president of the board? Because that's going to be one of the main people you want to have on your side, because they're going to help build agendas and structure things internally on what the conversations are going to be about. So do you have those one-on-one relationships with board members? And if not, how can you develop them so that you have advocates on the board as opposed to detractors or people that are creating obstacles?
Awesome. Thank you for that, Drew. There were tons of questions while you were talking that were coming in about the board and folks asking kind of better ways to engage with them. So I think you hit on a lot there for folks who are curious. Those are great insights. Kind of moving on to what I'll call the next topic. There's going to be a couple of questions here just about communication types, Drew. One came in from Kathleen first, asking if newsletters are important. You had mentioned it a couple of times throughout this presentation. It doesn't seem like they might be doing them right now. So wondering if that's something they should be implementing.
Yeah, so newsletters are, I guess the short answer is yes, newsletters are important. The frequency of those newsletters is totally up to your organization. I have organizations I work with that send out newsletters every week. I have newsletters that are organizations that send out newsletters once a quarter. What's important is to create a consistent cadence. And if you're only communicating with your people with a newsletter every quarter, then what are you doing in between that quarter to communicate with them so you don't fall to the background or they forget that you exist? Monthly is usually a really good structure because it gives you a month to prepare and create the content and then craft it and post it. One of the things I recommend is creating a newsletter calendar, just like a social media calendar. So you can ahead of the year, you're like, okay, January, February, March, what are these going to be about? And then you can always update and change them as new things happen or add new blog articles. And some people feel overwhelmed with a newsletter a lot of the time. They're like, I don't have time to write this, or like, there's like, what am I going to talk about? Um, AI is your friend. So all you got to do is, if you want it to plug in a couple points into AI, but the other is when people think of newsletters, they think of a lot of text. And I want to push you away from that mindset, because people, as smart as we all are, don't like to read a lot of small text in our emails. So what's better, and what I found has more engagement, plus drives people to your website, is have just a little bit of text kind of introducing the newsletter, and then having links to your blogs or other things that you've written in greater depth, so people can get kind of like a brief highlight of all the things that you've been doing over the last month. And if they want to read more, they can click on the blog. Always include a donation link within your fundraising, or excuse me, your newsletter, to give people the opportunity to donate, even if you're not doing a specific ask. And find someone on your team that loves to write, or I mean, blogs and writing, not everyone loves to do that, but there are other people that love it. So again, everyone has a piece to play in the fundraising game.
Yeah, super, super good point, Drew. And I think that moving away from big, heavy text is something we hear a lot and talk about a lot as well in some of these sessions. And I think plays into, what you're talking about, storytelling, right? Like what tells an effective story. People are not going to read a huge, 14 paragraph conversation, and kind of finding those highlights really help. Um, Thinking about email and talking about these strategies, we got a question in the chat asking if email fundraising and donor engagement campaigns were the most effective in your mind, or is this one of those, it depends?
It depends. If you have a open rate of like 2% when you send out emails to a list of 1,000, it's not your most effective way of communicating. You have to ask yourself, why am I only getting a 2% response rate to these emails? Now, there's things called A/B testing, which I highly recommend. You can Google it, A/B testing. And what that is you sending out media with similar topics, but worded and structured differently. Because then that allows you to look and see the responses that you get from each one to understand your community and then kind of move towards that conversation. The most effective is interpersonal relationships and their networks, because you can send out an email to 1,000 people and 2% of people are going to open it. If you get all of your board members to send out a personal email or a personal text to people within their network saying, hey, I want you to donate, your return on that is going to be much higher because you have that much higher level of trust within the organization. Plus, if you have structured your board where you have some movers and shakers on there, their networks you're not connected to with your email. And so ultimately, the goal would be to work with your board members to bring those people into your newsletter ultimately. But with
Yep.
Bonterra and with Network for Good and other of the softwares, when they make that initial donation, they're in your newsletter then moving forward and they've given. So you'll start to most likely organically see your newsletter numbers increase because people that are giving want to know what's going on because they've been excited about what someone else has told them.
Yeah. Great point. And this really nicely segues into another question I saw come in from a couple of people asking more specifically about KPIs, and wondering, what type of KPIs they should be tracking and how. An example here you just talked about was, what's your open rate, right? And then what do you do as a result? But could you give maybe a couple other key examples of those KPIs and how they should be tracking them?
Yeah, so open rates, conversion rates is another term you'll hear. So someone might open a newsletter, but what are they clicking on? Or someone might come to an event, but are they signing up to volunteer? Someone may come to one of your fundraisers or a fundraising event that you have, and do they donate? What are the things that you're trying to do? Also, you can track basically the increases in things. So you can also look at cost per dollars raised. That's another great thing to look at. So how much are you spending on your fundraising versus how much are you making? Are you spending $30,000 on an annual gala to break even or lose $100? Or is that $30,000 gala resulting in $150,000 in contributions? That'll help you to evaluate your plan, like I mentioned before, to determine, is what I'm doing working? And if not, how am I going to shift and make a note so that my cost per dollars go from in the black or in the red to making it so that my costs are very low, but my impact in my fundraising is very high. And you can do, just in the interest of time, and so we can get some more of the questions, I highly recommend using like a search online, like KPIs for fundraising or other kinds of resources that are available out there. And I'm sure Bonterra has some fantastic content that we can send out afterwards with regards to key performance indicators.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll see if we can include that with some of the other templates and things that everyone is going to get, and keep an eye on your email for some of those as well. And just quickly, that KPI is those key performance indicators, right? So what Drew is talking about, kind of, what works, having something to quantifiably measure and understand. Drew, you're going to like this question, so I might be biasly asking it, because it's about storytelling. So this one came in, and the question was, apart from newsletters, how can my organization leverage storytelling?
Yes. Well, I'd first start by asking yourself, what are we doing currently? Who are we serving? And what's the impact that we're having? Once you get that idea, you can approach it from a couple different perspectives. You can frame the problem of storytelling. So how is the problem impacting your community? Who in your community is it impacting? Where are their voices in what's going on? And I think that's something that sometimes is left out of nonprofit strategy is you're serving the community, but how are you having the community engage internally with the organization? Um, how are you representing their voices in the communications that are going out externally, in the program designs that you're working on internally, right? Because you want to design programs for people. So building relationships, finding people that are recipients of your services or that have had transformational experiences working with you, and ask them, it's very just straight up, would you mind sharing a testimony about your experience with us? We really want to let people know how important what we're doing is. If you have the skills to do video, I mean, we all have a phone, we all have a camera in our pocket. So would you mind giving me a 5-minute talk about why you think what we're doing is important and how it's touched your life? So those kinds of things that then you can either take and post just as it is with a little byline, or you can take and do some editing with and create these really cool social media messages or videos that you can send out. There's also in Network for Good, for example, there's an option for a video blast that you can do. So you could pre-record the video of all these great testimonies, and then you can video blast it out to your entire network of people within your list so that they can see it and get beyond just a social media post and people that are already in your network. But you know, the general idea is what's the problem, what's the solution and how it's being implemented, and what's the impact from that solution being implemented. And so that kind of story arc. So my name is Drew. I was struggling with this. I came into your organization. You helped me with X, Y, and Z. That really increased my whatever needed to be increased. And so therefore I was able to re-enter into the world and accomplish this. Give to the organization because your dollars help to make it so that people like Drew have these opportunities to transform their lives, right? So something as simple as that. It's just that you could follow that that recipe. It's the only word that my brain came up with for that. But yeah.
It's a good one. Um, so you kind of just talked about one way folks can use social media to help them with engagement, using those videos, maybe clipping it, etc. There are some people saying that they really struggle to find new donors and don't really get a ton of engagement on social media. So the question, I'm going to morph it into a two-parter, are there other ways to get better engagement on social media? And if not, do you have advice on different strategies folks could use to help them find those new donors?
Yeah, I have a mixed relationship with ads personally. Like I get it, they get out in front of people. I also feel really weird about giving Meta money. Like it's just weird. So I don't know your relationship with Meta or those larger tech companies. I really don't like paying for ads. So the way around that is organic engagement. And that's where your team and existing network comes in. If you have a small team of really passionate people, when you get ready to queue up a social media post, make sure that they are ready and raring to share that post. There's some statistic out there where if a post gets shared a certain amount of times organically within the first hour of being posted, then it gets out into a much larger spectrum. Plus, every person that shares it is introducing you to a new network of people that may not already be connected to it. So that's one way. The other way is get off the internet. Like the internet's great and it's wonderful for communicating things, but it's not a great way to build relationships. Like we're separated by a screen. If I'm not talking to you like this and we're engaging in some capacity, then I have no idea who made that post or why I care about it. But if I'm out in the community where the people are, or I'm at events that are associated with people that care about these issues, and I'm talking about what I'm doing, and I'm passionate, and I know my stuff, and I have clear goals, and I have a clear strategy, people are going to want to know, like, when was the last time you set up a table? Just a table with information of your organization with a sign-up sheet that says, come learn more about us. Do you do that a lot? If you do that a lot, when was the last time you went to an event or a conference associated with your topic to be able to build your network and expand outwardly? So I would, if you're running into roadblocks and obstacles with social media and you've already tried engaging your team and network and spreading it organically, face-to-face interactions are going to be probably your number one bet because it's much easier for me to get you to sign up for something if we can connect for a second. And I say, you want some more information? Just sign up right here. It's great. You know, just whatever, you'll get more information. And then they'll always remember me as an association with the organization and that positive feeling they had when they interacted with me. So that when they see messages from the organization, they're going to think Drew, they're going to think, oh, they need $5. I know Drew is involved with this. I'm going to donate $5, and that gets them into your funnel, or elevates them from just their newsletter participation.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, I'll let you take a breath. I'll let folks keep putting questions, and we probably have time for, I'm going to say, maybe one or two more. So if you haven't had the chance to ask your question, be sure to put it in the Q&A. Drew, I saw another one come in from Roger about storytelling. And I think what you said about involving your community is one piece of this. But the question was around, kind of working against the, savior mentality, right? And messaging for nonprofits and organizations. So do you have any advice on, kind of maybe different communication tactics or ways to frame your messaging to avoid that challenge?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think it is a balance because you I don't like the word empowering when we're talking about stuff because it suggests that the person didn't have innate power already, and so we're like imbuing them with power, which is not the case. I see Roger's statement. I don't know where I would be without X organization. I mean, I don't think a statement like that, because some people are in really hard situations, and it depends. It depends on your situation. If I'm an organization where I'm helping someone that's been struggling with addiction or houselessness to be able to get into a house and create that stability, I think that's a pretty compelling story. And I don't think it's putting them in a victim mentality. I think it's putting them in they sought resources, and the resources were there for them to uplift themselves into the situation where they want to be right now. They had that gumption within themselves. We just created the resources being available to them so that they can do it. Like that's why I don't like the sponsor when I'm working with organizations. I don't want to do sponsor a kid because it reminds me of that like starving African stuff, which I don't just really don't like. So how do you reframe your message so that your community is framed in a light that is powerful, capable, resilient, and facing most likely systemic issues that your organization is working to complete with the resources that are coming from the funding? And it's going to be unique for every organization, and it will take workshopping and really intentional communications. Do you have a communications professional working with you? If not, do you have money for a communications professional to work with you so that you can craft your message and massage that? Again, AI is a great tool for that, right? Like you could put in what you're writing and say, I don't want this to make it sound like the person's a victim. And then it could rewrite it for you and see what you comes back with. Do not copy and paste what AI says. Just putting that out there. Don't copy and paste it. Read it, edit it, make it so it doesn't have any errors with it, because it's still just a tool. You're the human that needs to cross-reference and make sure everything is correct. So yeah, those are some suggestions I think I would have. But also props to them even having that mindset. So props to Roger for asking that question, and props to folks that are actively working to not dehumanize or minimalize or kind of trivialize the real energy and power it takes to even engage with an organization in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, Drew, and agree with that. And thank you, Roger, for raising it. Trying to keep an eye on any more questions. I know we're coming up at time here. I did see, as predicted, a question if we're going to get access to the recording. Actually, more than one. So proud of myself for seeing that one ahead of time. Yes, everybody. Sorry if you missed it at the beginning. I should have sent a reminder at the halfway point. We are recording today's session, and we will email everybody the recording next week. So keep an eye out on the email that you registered with. That's where we'll be sending this recording. And as Drew mentioned, we've got some other resources to hand out, some templates, guides, etc., all talking about these different strategies. So you will get that. And I will just, looks like, end with here a huge thank you to Drew. There were lots of thank yous that came in throughout while you were answering questions. So if you didn't have a chance to see them, I just want to have a big echo for everybody here and say thank you so much for all of your insight and all of the advice and the hot seat coaching here at the end. I know it's difficult to be put on the spot sometimes with some of these questions, so really appreciate you diving into all of this.
And before we end, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Amanda,
Not at
just to
all.
close this out, everybody, I really appreciate you all showing up today because that shows your dedication to what you're doing and you're passionate about the work you'd be doing anything else right now. And you chose to be here to learn potentially and hopefully gain some new skills and or insight as to what to do. But I want us to end with this. If you're interested in receiving one-on-one coaching, I saw a lot of questions in the chat of like, how do we contact Drew? Or like, hey, I want to reach out to you, Drew. If you're interested in getting coaching, let Bonterra know. Amanda, I'm sure will let you know how you can sign up for additional coaching, and you can choose your coaches. Like I'm one of an array of amazing coaches that do fantastic work. But if you want to work with me specifically, work with Bonterra, sign up for some coaching hours, and then you can select me to work with you to make that happen. So thank you again for coming and being a part of it. Thank you, Amanda, for your amazing slide solutions after the little technical issue. And here's a poll, everybody. Yeah, if you want, let us know if you're interested to connect and spend some more time. You can, I mean, imagine spending 20 hours together working on this stuff. We could make some serious impact and work through all the different nooks and crannies of what you're trying to figure out and make it happen. So thank you again for coming and being a part. Thank you, Amanda, for the invitation, and to Bonterra for offering these amazing webinar resources for people. Because I was an interim or a new fundraiser, it was webinars like these that really helped me to ground in the fundraising world. So you're doing a huge service to folks.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it, Drew. Thanks for being our wonderful voice here. And yes, for folks who want to come to more webinars, we do these as regularly as we can. So just keep an eye out on emails from Bonterra. Usually we're putting webinar in the subject line. We checked our open rate KPIs for that, and we'll let you know. We're going to put on as many sessions as we can. We bring in our coaches because they, as you can see, are just full of knowledge and have so much experience and expertise and lots of new perspectives to bring to the table. So really appreciate you and your perspective, Drew. And again, thank you everybody for being here. And we hope to see you at our next session. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, your week, your month, and we'll chat with you soon. Take care.